Everyone, welcome to the show. I have updates to share about Donald Trump's trials and tribulations, and mostly his trial that's ongoing right now. So the judge started off today advising the jury that there's nothing suspicious about a witness meeting with the prosecutor prior to the trial. So Judge Juan Merchan explained that it's often to nail down testimony and details, and it doesn't mean that there's anything nefarious going on. So that followed another correction that was issued by the judge to the jury after the judge smacked down Trump's attorneys around, some issues that came up on Thursday afternoon. So Trump's attorney, Emil Bove is his name, he pissed off the judge yesterday. He basically implied that witness David Pecker lied about who attended a meeting with him and Trump. And Bove appeared to be insinuating that Pecker told federal prosecutors that Hope Hicks was not at this meeting that was in question, but then he told state prosecutors that she was at the meeting. But when everything came out and when the prosecutor explained Hicks' name never was even mentioned when Pecker met with the feds. So why would he even say, oh, she wasn't there when her name never came up? The judge sided with them and said, yeah. So, he basically accused Bove of misleading the jury. Now, he said this to Bove after the jury had been dismissed for the day. But Judge Merchan told Bove, quote, "It's misleading and we're going to correct this tomorrow." And then he said that the court would be issuing a, quote, curative jury instruction. So that's that. And, as with Trump attorney Todd Blanche, Bove is not scoring any points with this judge. Could also affect how the jury feels about Trump's defense, since they, I'm sure they don't like being lied to or misled. So, like I said, that all went down yesterday and then this morning. And then today, Trump's Pecker was back on the stand. He was there to finish up his testimony. And Trump's team continued with their cross-examination, which they started yesterday. So Bove brought up the fact that Pecker was attempting to sell the National Enquirer at this same time when all of this stuff was going down and he was being interviewed by the feds about possibly, having some sort of involvement in campaign finance violations. So they got Pecker to admit and concede that, yeah, he had to get this whole thing settled in order to complete this transaction, this sale. And there was like $100 million on the line. That's how much the company was going to pay for the National Enquirer. But then he admitted on redirect that his intention in trying to, quote unquote, lock up the Karen McDougal story had to do with the election. It wasn't about trying to sell the newspaper. It was about getting this election or swinging the election to Donald Trump. And so when he was asked, was it specifically for the election, he said yes. Then they asked him in another way. The prosecutor said, quote, "In this case, did you suppress the stories to help a presidential candidate?" And again, Pecker answered in the affirmative. He said yes. And then Pecker also conceded the National Enquirer would have made far more money if they had just published these stories about Trump's affairs. So it actually cost the paper money by not publishing them, by helping Trump to catch and kill them. The defense got up, they redirected after the redirect, and then Trump's attorney asked him or tried to get him to say that Karen McDougal was a quote unquote celebrity at the time that they made this deal with her. And as I mentioned to you guys, they gave her a couple of articles in various publications that they had. And Pecker said no. He said, quote, "I wouldn't say there was a value to her brand to a media company." And he said, ABC only agreed to interview her because of her Trump story. So, yeah, I mean, nobody knew who the hell Karen McDougal was, right? She wasn't like a household name. She wasn't in movies. She wasn't on, TV. She wasn't in newspapers, magazines. Until the Trump story came out, nobody had any interest in her. He also admitted that McDougal didn't even write those fitness columns that they posted under her name. The National Enquirer hired ghostwriters. So it literally cost them even more money to pay the ghostwriters. But he said he wanted to, quote, keep her happy, which you know what that means. He wanted to keep her silent. And Trump would ask him periodically, oh, how's our girl? How's Karen doing? And Pecker would assure him, oh, she's good. She's keeping quiet. So after taking a few hits to the kneecaps, Trump's attorney probably decided, I think I'm going to stop the bleeding. I'm going to be done with him because the redirect of the redirect was not going well. He was not getting anything out of Pecker. It was just bad all around. I mean, they really did not land any blows. The only thing I can see them kind of using is it came up, can't remember, I think it was the day before yesterday, it came up that Hope Hicks and Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who at that time worked for Trump's administration, she was like his communications person. She would go out there and lie about everything. And she's like supposedly, quote unquote, Christian. And she's out there lying for him. And then on top of it, it came out that she knew about the whole thing with Stormy Daniels and was helping to cover that up and was saying like, and I think Karen McDougal, and was saying like, oh yeah, you need to extend the contract so that they keep quiet. So complete and total hypocrisy. But I can see how the defense would use that because this was supposedly these conversations with Huckabee Sanders and Hope Hicks took place after Trump was in the White House. So if I was the defense attorney, I would use that to Trump's benefit. I would say, look, this proves it wasn't about the election because he was already in the White House and he was still trying to keep it secret. Now, we all know he didn't want to piss off his evangelical base. He didn't want to get impeached. He didn't want to lose his, reelection. So there are reasons, and I'm sure the prosecutor could again, take it in a different direction. But anyway, so that's that. Trump's Pecker is done. Sorry, guys. Probably won't have any more fun titles for you after this. But next up, they called witness Rona Graff. Now, she was a longtime employee with Trump. She was his personal assistant for over 30 years. I think it was like 36 years. She handled all of his communication because Trump, infamously, he did not use email, did not text or anything. So she handled all of that. And her attorneys, by the way, are being paid for by Trump. So that tells you where her loyalties lie. She said a couple of noteworthy things, but she was barely on the witness stand because she wasn't going to be friendly to the prosecution. But they did get her to admit she heard Trump say that Stormy Daniels would make an interesting contestant for his Apprentice show. So that corroborates Stormy Daniels' upcoming testimony that she had discussed that idea with Trump. Also, Graff confirmed that Daniels went to Trump Tower at one point and that she had Stormy Daniels' phone number and Karen McDougal's phone numbers in Trump's directory for him. But on redirect, Graff said that Trump often signed his checks while he was multitasking. So that kind of hurts the prosecution slightly because, the defense is going to argue in closing, well, Trump obviously was distracted. He wasn't aware that he was signing checks for hush money. We all know it's BS. And then the prosecutor called a third witness today, surprisingly. They called a man named Gary Farrow, and Farrow, he worked at Michael Cohen's bank, and he was assigned to Cohen's account. So he confirmed that, yes, Cohen came in, he wanted me to set things up for him, and it aligns with what was going on in the campaign and what other people have talked about. So this Farrow said that Cohen had emailed him in mid-October, October 13th to be specific, and he was in a very big hurry. He wanted him to set up an LLC immediately, and he needed checks for this LLC, and he didn't want an address on it. And they asked him, was that normal? And he said, well, yeah, sometimes people don't want their address on a LLC checks, but not always. And then this was kind of interesting. This didn't come up in court, but this was reported. It basically just proves that it's not just the MAGA base that's off in their own little Trump fanboy bubble. CNN reporter Kristen Holmes reported that some of Trump's inner circle is concerned because they're learning a lot about all of this for the first time. Things that they weren't previously aware of, some of these details that are being revealed in court, they had no idea. And Holmes said, quote, "I'm talking to these Trump senior advisors. A lot of them are learning about this in real time. They have no idea what's going on inside the courtroom." In other Trump news, a federal judge, this is a good thing, has denied Trump's request for a new E. Jean Carroll defamation trial. So as we all know, she was given $83 million in the second defamation case or trial because he just can't keep his mouth shut. So yeah, that will stand. I'm sure Trump is going to keep appealing and, try to run out the clock. So we'll see what happens. As far as the election interference case for Trump, it is not looking good. As I mentioned yesterday, 5 of the justices, the 5 male justices, seemed inclined to give Trump at least partial immunity on some of what he's charged with. They don't seem to care that he tried to overthrow the government, that he tried to steal the election. They don't seem to care about any of it. And one thing I forgot to mention yesterday, if you were listening to their debate, you definitely picked up on this because it was so blatant. They didn't want the prosecutor to bring up any details about what Trump is alleged to have done. It was almost laughable. I mean, it got almost comical at one point because every single male justice, when the prosecutor would try to bring up specifics about Trump's case and crimes that he is alleged to commit, they would shut him down immediately. They would just talk over him. They would change direction. They didn't want anything out there because I think they know everyone was watching and listening to that, right? I mean, MSNBC was broadcasting it live on their air, but I'm sure because Trump supporters are very concerned and want him to be granted total and complete immunity, I'm sure even MAGA was paying attention to what was going on in that courtroom. And I'm sure they were terrified of the MAGA base hearing for the first time the truth about what Trump did. Because the MAGA base did not bother to read the indictment. They did not bother to watch anything outside of their faux news bubble. So, that was my take, that they were just trying to shut it down. But it seems like they are trying very hard to make the case that, we have to rule on an overarching case, not on Trump specifically, but whether or not presidents in general have total and complete immunity, and that they are leaning in that direction. And one thing that pissed me off, and I really wish the prosecutor, would have said something to contradict this. At one point, Brett Kavanaugh brought up, well, what if a president rallied his supporters to come down to the Capitol to protest a law that the president disagrees with, that Congress is about to pass, and they interrupt the proceeding? Would that be somebody, something that you could charge obstruction of an official proceeding with? What the prosecutor didn't say, which I would have said if I was the prosecutor, is no, because that is within the president's scope. Making laws governing this country is within a president's mandate as the president of the country. That is what he's there for, is to implement policy. So yeah, that's part of his duties as the president, to help pass legislation, to help pass his agenda or stop legislation that is not something that he wants. So yeah, if they had rallied people, and I would have said there is a difference between telling people to come down and protest peacefully versus telling people, you got to fight like hell or you're not going to have a country left, and having people sign fraudulent documents like the fake electors did, and then trying to get those documents in front of the vice president that day. So, and also knowing that the crowd had weapons and saying, I don't care, let my people through, they're not here to hurt me. And then sitting back and not doing anything, total dereliction of duty, not doing anything when you know that those people have now gotten out of control and they are attacking the police and they are attacking the Capitol. So I would have brought up all those points. Unfortunately, it was a much more high-minded conversation, and they didn't get into the muck and the weeds like that. And so, yeah, it was very, very upsetting for me sitting back screaming as I'm listening to it. But anyway, so they seem poised to give him some sort of win. And if they do, obviously it's bad if they say, no, this case can't go forward. But what we're hearing now is, even if they say, hey, we're going to kick this back down to the lower court, and the lower court has to decide which of Trump's actions fall within his official duties and which ones were for his campaign. And then you can only charge Trump for the crimes related to his campaign. If they do that, then it's on Judge Chutkan, who is no fan of Trump's or what happened on January 6th. So whatever she rules, which she's a very fair person, but I guarantee she's not going to rule 100% in his favor. So whatever she rules against him, then he can go and take it back to the Supreme Court and keep appealing. So the likelihood of this going to trial before the election now is very slim. I truly thought that this would be one of the criminal cases that absolutely would make it to court, but this is 100% on the Supreme Court. So in summation, if Trump wins in November, if Trump becomes a full-on dictator, if he refuses to concede again, if he loses, or if he loses in the following election in 2028, and whatever carnage that comes is 100% on the Supreme Court justices on the right, the conservative Supreme Court justices. If there is blood spilled, it is 100% on them. If people are rounded up, put in concentration camps, if, he just goes nuts and defrauds everyone and steals money and sells our country down the road and sells our nuclear secrets and everything else, 100% on them, because they did not handle this immediately when it came before them last year, when they could have made a decision, they could have taken up this case when Jack Smith asked them to. Literally last year. I believe it was November or December. So 100%, this is going to be on Brett Kavanaugh, you know, Thomas, on Alito, on all of them. All of them. So the only hope at this point is that one of those 5 men will come to their senses and realize they're going to have blood on their hands. All right, I will let you all know when I hear more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. Please donate if you can. Take care. Love you all.